let's start with what's going on with these budget cuts. Tell me about the president's budget. Can you accept the president's budget, his recommendations for some of these cuts that he has in it, including to Pell Grants?
Well, I can accept them, but I'm not happy with them. I don't want to pretend that I'm happy with them. I think the year-round Pell Grant is essential to, certainly to low-income students who are trying to get their lower division courses out of the way at community college as rapidly as they can. That's unfortunate, but there's nothing compared to the cuts that are being made on the House floor that were made last night and again today, which you really see is a tearing up of a long-time bipartisan consensus about funding education for poor and minority children, about students with disabilities, about improving our teacher corps, and the absolute need for the Head Start program. And yet we see cuts that are going to throw 250,000 children out of Head Start, that are going to dramatically reduce funding available to improve the teacher corps that is so necessary for the reforms that we're all talking about and we'll be talking about at the White House. So that's really unfortunate, and along with zeroing out the job training programs in this country. So there's two things going on here at the same time that make all this a little bit more difficult, but I'm very encouraged by the president getting directly involved in the education debate. The secretary has led these bipartisan meetings in the House and the Senate over the last 2 years. We've been meeting on a regular basis among the leadership and of the committees in the House and the Senate.
Congressman, you mentioned some of the cuts, particularly in education, an issue near and dear to you, and there's no question they're tough and they hurt. But isn't that the very nature of cuts? I suppose the argument is the federal government is out of money, so you got to cut somewhere.
Savannah, everybody, all morning long, people are talking about tough cuts. It's not tough to take money away from a poor child. It's not tough to kick a child out of Head Start. You want to do something tough? Take away a tax break from the hedge fund managers that don't deserve it. You want to do something tough? Make the oil companies pay the royalties that the taxpayers of this country are owed. That's tough. You know why? Because they can fight back. Head Start parents don't get to fight back very much. Poor children don't get to fight back very much. People looking for a job don't get to fight back. There's nothing tough about that. And plus, as you know, you've said it 100 times, it's a tiny little part of the budget. The big money is elsewhere in this budget, and the Republicans have decided this is where they're going to focus, on working people and poor people. That's where all of the cuts come from.
And you know, I was just going to follow up on that because, as you say, there are other places to get money. Raising revenue is one. You've named a couple of examples. Where would you cut? I mean, assuming you agree, there have to be some spending cuts. What would you put on the chopping block?
There's no question that it has to be done. But the idea that this is all going to be done on the cutting side, unfortunately, there was a bipartisan agreement at the end of the last session that we're going to take taxes off of the table, and they've essentially been taken off of the table. So where do you zero in? You see these cuts focusing in on the poorest people in this nation in the most need of help for our the investments that we have to make so that these kids can succeed and our economy can succeed. I just came from a meeting with all of the scientists and engineers about, again, we're continuing to fall back behind other nations. Everybody laments it. They just don't want to do anything about it.